Lorem Ipsum. Lorem Ipsum. Ahmed said, Lorem Ipsum. 3. Sed diem nomini. 34. Invitud ut labore. 3. Dolores et ea rebrum. 3. Sed diem tempor meetup. Dolor magma volupta labore et. 3. Neos. Neos. 3.0. This is Lorem Ipsum. It's kind of a language, but without any value. And this is basically the problem with it. It's maybe, you can say it's some kind of art language. I tried to give it a little bit of something in my first few minutes, but I'm definitely not a poet. Basically, I met one yesterday, so he is one, but not with Lorem Ipsum. Lorem Ipsum, we all know it, and there is a basic problem with this kind of text. It has no meaning. There are several other interpretations of Lorem Ipsum, like beer ipsum. You can also use for making up some text. One I really like myself is Samuel L. Jackson ipsum. Or Hodor ipsum. So imagine a GitHub pull request for Neos which just say Hodor, Hodor, Hodor. Or another one, I mean, in this list, this guy has to be on this list. I mean, check out the first one. Chuck Norris originally appeared in the Street Fighter II video game, but was removed by beta testers. he just did roundhouse kicks all the time, so it was not really good. All right. Lorem Ipsum is entertaining. It's some kind of an art, but it's not the right thing to use if it comes to your project or if you would like to create one, because the most important thing is missing, and this is your content. So let's start from scratch. My talk today is about no more Lorem Ipsum and wireframing with Neos CMS. 3 is kind of my number right now. I'm 34 years old. I have 3 kids. My company is located in Vienna, Austria, in the 3rd district. I actually have 2 companies. One is a web agency, the other one is a digital signage product. You can see it outside the social wall screens, and live streaming is provided by us. My official position in the company is CEO and co-founder in both companies, but I also have an unofficial title, and this is Chief of Awesomeness. And the reason is, Neos is just awesome. So, and I'm the guy who is in charge for all that stuff in our company, so that makes me obviously the Chief of Awesomeness. I also try to spread the word. I founded the Neos CMS and Flow Meetup Vienna. We had 3 meetups so far. Roland Schütz, is he already in the audience or still somewhere shit-faced in the corner? Yeah, we have about 80 members in the group right now. That's a lot for Austria, I think. It's a little bit confusing in Austria because there's also a political party called Neos. So I a little bit background checked the meetup profiles, and I think 60 of them are on the right track. 20 of them are just thought, yeah, well, different kind of content. All right, let's go further. So Neos 3.0, very nice release, lots of new features. And what I really like about Neos is that the claim actually to be a content application platform. For me, that means that it's more like a other term that fits 2 different terms, like CMS and framework. So you can do much more with Neos than just creating websites. You can make products with it, or every website is basically a product. We do nothing else than making products for our customers. It has a very, very strong foundation and lets you do a lot of stuff. And we at Web & Co thought, let's use it to make pre-production. And pre-production is actually quite important when it comes to content-based applications or so-called websites. And for me, when it comes to pre-production, 3 words are very important. That's content first, MVP, and agility. Pull request. Oh no, a typo. sorry about that. All right. A classic, actually. I do that all the time. Yeah, so how did we do it back in the old days? It was the classic waterfall principle that you make a concept, then you design. After that, you implement, and at the end, your customer starts using the website and starts creating content with it. There's a basic problem with that. It's a linear process, so you're not supposed to go any step back. If you're in the design phase, you're not supposed to go back to concept. You can, but it will cost you a lot of resources and time to do that. So it's kind of very strict. Let's shape this a little bit more and give it 3 phases: pre-production, production, and post-production. And in the pre-production, you obviously do your concept, then you start producing actually with design and implementation. And after that, when you're done with your work, you hand it over to your client and say, hey, you can start creating content, I will help you with that. But the thing is, from your point of view, you don't know how much content it is, so you actually don't know it until post-production what your client really want to do, because he never had hands-on. Quick question, who of you knows what an MVP is? Okay, so I think I don't have to explain it. Let's skip that real quick. All right, so this timeline is, from an MVP perspective, not good, because until you hit post-production, your client cannot work with it. He's not involved in the project. He cannot provide, I mean, he will provide feedback and input, but not really good one because he never used it. It's like talking about riding a bike and never did it. All right, let's take a look from an agility perspective. The same thing, basically. This process is not very agile, so when you hit the implementation, your implementation, it's not, you're not supposed to go back to design. So it's there's no agility in this process. There's another way to look at it, and this is from a black box perspective. So your client sees your work as a black box because, I mean, he might be involved. Of course, he will be involved when you do a concept with him. But the really, really big issue is that he never really thought about his content. So until you have finished production, this is a black box for your client. On the other side, the post-production or the content is a black box for you. So in a worst-case scenario, it's a black box for both of you. And in such, this very likely brings up misunderstanding. And content first is all about, from my point of view, avoiding those misunderstandings and bringing in the content as early as possible. All right. So, as I see it, the major issue is that the concept is in pre-production and the content is in post-production, and in between is some work. So we have to bring this together, and we have to do this in pre-production. So if you bring the content to pre-production, you will eventually end up with much better results. Your client is happy along the way, or should be happy along the way. He's always involved. He can always provide good feedback of your work. It kind of fits this the MVP approach because when you start concept and content together without design and without implementation, you have a minimum viable product. As soon as you hit production, you might have a working prototype without investing much time in coding or designing. The second benefit is that you can do things in parallel in production, because if you plan your pre-production phase quite well, you have all the information ready you need to start building the actual product or website. And the client can talk for weeks about green or blue or big logos or small logos. And you, or for me in that example, I can start implementing. I have all the information I need, I have all my node types defined, and I can just go on and wait until he's done. And in post-production, you can do even more things we didn't see before, like Q&A and other things, testing. All right. This is the gray theory about it. Let's bring it to a practical use case. So we said we would like to use Neos to do that. It's a content application platform. Let's use it. Everything that I'm going to show you from this point forward is not a final package or a final product or whatsoever. It's basically very agile right now, so we extend it every time we hit a new barrier, feature, or milestone, or whatever. And there are lots of milestones to do until this is done. But it should give you an impression what we try to do, and we hope you like it. So, every project has a start. And for me, that means you have to start synchronize. If it comes to people or minds, you can have the same picture and probably about 100 different interpretations in this room about this picture or sentence or whatsoever. So, on a certain level, when you start a new project, you have to synchronize your gears to lift the project to the next level. You usually do that with a lot of tools. From my point of view, way too much tools. There are great tools out there to do pre-production or, I don't know, prototyping, wireframing. There's a lot of stuff out there. For me, the problem with that is that I have several tools I have to manage. I have several tools I have to communicate to my client and collect the feedback. So less tools leads to less complexity and leads to better communication with your client. And we use, right now, Neos for pre-production. All right, how could something like that work? We came up with something with the code name, of course, called the Wheel of Awesomeness. The Wheel of Awesomeness has 4 sections: discussion, structure, content, and documentation. And this Wheel of Awesomeness should be able to handle your entire pre-production phase All right, so every spinning or one round trip of this Wheel of Awesomeness starts with a discussion. So you have a meeting with your client, you make a workshop, you have your back and forth email, whatsoever. The best scenario I can picture right now is a workshop where you have, I don't know, let's say 5 to 8 people from your agency and from the client, some people, and everybody has thoughts and concerns and features and excitement, so much emotion, so much energy in the room, and you have to somehow bring this to a first level of understanding, start synchronizing all that minds. And from my point of view, a very helpful tool to do that is a wireframe box. It's very simple, it does not have lots of content, but it helps you to bring everybody to the first level and synchronize minds to a structure. So we created a package for Neos that lets you run a website within Neos that does nothing else than wireframing. So you can run it in parallel to your actual project and do your wireframing right within Neos. So I prepared a video how that works. So you select a structure element, you create a wireframe box. In the inspector panel, you can set some meta information, and then you save it, and it's done. A wireframe box, quite easy. On the lower right side, you can see that you can change the behavior a little bit, if it should be a section with a container class. This is based on Bootstrap right now, but it actually doesn't matter. You can do it whatever you want. Then we create a second element. Hero teaser, 400, save it, and it's done. And we can use this right at the workshop or in the discussion to quickly bring the input from your client to a very, very basic structure without leaving the tool of choice. And also, this means that your client, if you work with him together to create those wireframes, he will see the final product at the very early stage. So from an MVP perspective, this is somehow an MVP. You know, it doesn't do much, but the client sees immediate feedback from you. Okay, so I found a website online. I reverse engineered, and I'll show you that video now. All right, we created a wireframe. So this reverse engineering process took me about 15 minutes to rebuild it. If we go to the next section in our wheel of awesomeness, we created a structure. We had a discussion with our client, and we created a first structure to synchronize minds, thoughts, ideas. And we ended up with this, a wireframe, right in Neos. All right, some of you probably already guessed and recognized the structure. This is not any website, a random website from the web. It's the Neos start page. I recreated with wireframes the Neos start page in about 15 minutes within Neos. The second step is to bring in content. So you have lots of content now on the start page of Neos.io. Neos.io or Neos.io? Doesn't matter, right? Neos.io. And I would also like to bring in this content to my wireframes to have a first prototype or fit to the content first principle. And for that, I prepared another video, and let's see how that turns out. All right, so I have to be honest, I didn't integrate all the content because I was too lazy at the end. I think you get the basic idea that you can start with wireframes and then you can bring in your content immediately. And this is very important because this is the first time your client really works with the system and he really thinks about what matters most, the content. And this is also the reason why you never should use Lorem Ipsum when it comes to content applications, because you loop out the most important thing, the content. All right, so we inserted the content, and it's also responsive. This is based on Bootstrap right now, but you could use any other framework you would like. All right. Section number 3 done, we have content. And the Wheel of Awesomeness has one more purpose, also something we have to improve in the future, but already works out quite well, it should provide some kind of documentation. So when you're done with your pre-production process, you should be able to start producing without having or raising new big questions and start producing immediately. So for that, you can also set some more meta information within each wireframe box. So on the lower left side, you see your structure, so your developers can check out the structure they have to build. And on the top, you have this in place and wireframe mode. editing mode, so you can always switch back between content first or in-place editing and wireframing. And in the inspector panel, you can set additional nodes. So the idea is that you might still need some kind of a side letter, to get a basic understanding, to loop the client in if he never ever saw this before. But very soon, it should turn out that not this PDF or Word document is your documentation, your wireframes, your content, and your structure. That's your documentation for production. So, we finished the Wheel of Awesomeness. And this is just one iteration of many, and you don't know how many you will need. There will be a point in time where everybody agrees that we are done with this. Oops. But until that, the Wheel of Awesomeness keeps spinning. You can also see it as a sandbox. If you're in a sandbox and you build a sandcastle, you can do that very quickly. You just need a little bit of water. But you can, when you're unhappy with it, you can destroy it very easily. So you don't invest much time in how you do it. You just put something together, feedback with the client, how do you like it? He says yes, no, maybe, I don't know. And then you go on and on and on and on until you're done. So, for me, the Wheel of Awesomeness fits all three principles: content first, MVP, and agility. And we use it with a few projects right now, and it works out quite well, actually. There's still a lot of work to do, but it's really good already that you can send your client a link from the CMS he will use and provide him with information in pre-production. So why invest in pre-production? From my understanding, avoid misunderstandings. It's so easy to come up with misunderstandings, and I always have a joke I tell my clients that is, imagine a mother who has a son or a daughter who is a software developer, and he sends him for groceries and says, hey, can you please go to the store and bring me 2 liters of milk? And if they have eggs, bring 6. He returned with 6 liters of milk. And she said, why did you do that? And he said, because they had eggs. So, depending on your background or your skills or whatever, this simple true-false condition has a totally different outcome. And if you get this at the end of your waterfall process, you have a big problem. We already had that. So, avoid misunderstandings. What do I get from this? Get client's feedback as early as possible. Get to know him, synchronize with him. Improve client communication, simplify client communication. Don't use 7 tools, try to do it with 1. Less complexity leads to better results. And last but not least, if you have a problem, fail early. If there is anything wrong with all the things you have in your mind, or you have a very, very big misunderstanding, find it out as early as possible, because otherwise the project will never be a success. All right, let's go back to our timetable, timeline. So we've replaced in pre-production concept and content with the Wheel of Awesomeness. And it spins and spins and spins until everybody's happy and we can start producing a product, a website. All right, the Wheel of Awesomeness. Some benefits are no media break when it comes to communication. Early hands-on the final product. It's not a black box. And just send your client a link and get immediate feedback and use other SaaS services to collect it for Jira or whatever. And last but not least, we had to come up with a code name again. So this project is running under Awesome Neos right now. And yeah, we are actually looking for companies, developers, people who are interested to shape this even further and bring it to a full-featured, polished package for Neos, and eventually provide better work and better results with your client. So if you're interested, contact me over Twitter, Xing, LinkedIn, or GitHub. And yeah, we are reaching out to people who would like to do this together with us. Thank you very much. Questions?
Thank you. I have a question. Do you use it in view? It's okay. Do you use it just for prototyping and just for the pre-production and throw it away and do it again in Neos, or do you some kind transform it into the real thing?
No, we don't do that right now, and I'm also not 100% sure if we should do that. I remember, there's this buzzword Kickstarter. I think some of you still know it. If you change something in your documentation, or you have to really go back and do something, you would run into a problem. So this is a thought we have, but for now, I think it's better to start with a clean plate. And you have to rebuild the structure anyway, because the structure within the Wheel of Awesomeness is very, not fragile, but very atomic, you know. So it's your editor would never work that way, how you create that wireframe. So I think it's better to rethink one more time, recap, and then go on with a clean plate. This is what I say now. I don't know if people have good ideas and have awesome ideas. I'm happy to hear them and follow them.
Any more questions?
Thank you very much. First of all, thanks for the whole idea of having the content in the pre-production phase. I think everybody thought about it, but it rarely happens because it's also very, very client depending. What strikes me a little bit odd is that you said we have too many tools, and your response was to build another tool. And that you then said you will not use later in production. So I don't really get the benefit of the approach. Because with the, even say it's bootstrap based, because with the bootstrap package in Neos, you can simply just have every bootstrap element available and just start building the content with bootstrap elements, which most likely will be the elements you will use later in production anyhow. And even further question, how does it work with the hard stuff? Because just static content side is one thing. Most clients get this really easily. But what about the application parts? The part of the website that has lots of interlinking features, a lot of client user inputs, etc. So the really hard to plan and lay out parts that actually need wireframing and prototyping. How do you tackle this with your Wheel of Awesome?
I don't say that you can go 100% away. If you have a specific use case that needs further tools, sure, use it. But don't start with 6 different tools if you don't need them.
Who does? Who does?
Yeah, you can use many tools out there for doing wireframing or for prototyping right now, but you have a media break, and you cannot just send a link to your client and collect feedback immediately. And also the thing is that I think it's not a good idea to throw in the content before defining a structure. And this is where the wireframe is very helpful, because you are even faster in the wireframe phase, to shuffle things around and create new basic concepts before you even think to put in the content. So if you start with the content, you already have a lot of workload, and you have to go right into detail without having a structure, you know? So this is kind of the idea.
We have 2 more minutes.
Do you have a strategy for content migration? Because if the editor or if the content editor start to insert content in your pre-production phase, there will be probably hundreds of pages with thousands of content node types, and I can't imagine that the editors would be happy to just insert it again.
Not yet. It's also, if you evolve it over time, let's say it's not a project with one iteration, or you relaunch or whatever, you might want to do import or something, or you might want to use a concept like atomic fusion to achieve some very cool mapping, transformation, whatever stuff. But this is also things that are in the future right now, and use cases that need to be developed to shape this to a polished package. So this is just the start we did. It's very raw actually right now, but this is definitely a way it has to go.
Good morning. Oh, whoa, this is loud. Good morning. First of all, I think we should all remember what the speaker right before you just said. So in this sense, nice work. As I see it, it is really just a tool for wireframing. That's all it does. There are other tools out there that do exactly the same thing. But what I like about your approach is that you get a website out of it, which is really responsive. You just can open up a browser and show the client what will happen. And yeah, after all, I like your approach for what it is. Yeah.
Thanks. Additional to that is that if your client starts putting in content, he already learns how to use the final product. So you don't have to tell him or explain to him two different tools. It's the same thing. One more question.
I don't need a microphone. I'm pretty close to you.
But I think they recorded for the...
Okay. So if you give your client the possibility to enter content right in the pre-production phase, shouldn't you do content strategy meetup first with him to get some kind of inventory or something else? Because usually we have clients that say, yeah, we have a website that has been running for 10 years, our products, our branches, everything changed over time, and they have no idea what they should prioritize or how should they put it on a site. So if I just give them wireframes or structure, they're completely lost because they have no idea what they should put on there.
Excuse me, can I have the video back on for a minute? So this happens in the discussion phase. However you structure that, however you do that, you're collecting ideas, you're developing content strategies, this very agile process, a lot of information, a lot of thoughts, concerns, sure, of course. But at a certain point, you have to start synchronizing that to a basic structure. And if you see that structure, everybody should be satisfied, because if somebody says, this totally does not reflect what we want to do on a very, very abstract level, you have to go back to the discussion. But you can do that because it's very a very agile approach to do it.
I think if you have any question, please get in touch with David directly. We are at the coffee break, and please give us feedback on your way out. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.